I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us here on Closing Arguments. This is a big hour. We got a lot of information, brand new information that's been revealed in the investigation into the sexual abuse and murder of 13-year-old Madeline Soto. This is one of the last photos of her. That's her at her relative's house at her 13th birthday party. That was on a Sunday. Her mom wasn't there. You know who else wasn't there? The man who's been accused of her murder, Stephan Sterns. He's also been accused of sexually abusing her. And we know this now because we were able to put together a better timeline of where Madeline was and what was happening after that birthday party and before she was reported missing the following day. So let's get to it, and it's from really three different sources. The first source is the story from Stephan Sterns himself. Again, take it with a grain of salt, but this is what he's saying. He told investigators on February 25th, 2024, at approximately 20:45 hours, Stephan arrived at Jen and Madeline's residence. Okay, so this is on Sunday. When he arrived, Jen was still at work, and he directed Madeline to get ready for bed. So he's home with Madeline. Mom's not there. Once Jen arrived, she informed Stephan and Madeline she would like to sleep in and directed them, meaning Stephan and Madeline, to sleep upstairs in the guest room. The following morning, Stephan and Madeline woke up at approximately 7 to 7:15 to get an early start so they could purchase food from McDonald's before school. Madeline and he left the residence between 7:30 and 7:45. Okay, so that's Stephan's story. Now we also have what Jen advised and told investigators. Jen advised that her sister had dropped Madeline off at her house at approximately 20:30 hours, that's 8:30, and she believes Stephan had arrived shortly after that time. Stephan informed Jen that Madeline had taken her nighttime medication and was getting ready for bed, which consisted of taking a shower. Jen arrived at the house from work at approximately 22:30 hours and sent Madeline and Stephan to bed at approximately 2300 hours, 11 o'clock at night. Madeline, Mom, is sending Madeline and Stephan to bed together. I asked Jen what time he had woken up on February 26th, to which he stated she believed sometime between 8 and 8:15 because Stephan had gone into the room to put the leash on the dog around 8:15. I asked Jen if she visually observed Madeline on the morning of February 26, 2024, to which she stated no. This contradicts what we've heard before. No. I asked if she had heard her, and she stated she heard people in the kitchen, but was not sure if it was specifically Jen, if it was her. Jen then stated the last time she had physically seen Madeline was on February 25th at 11 o'clock when she had sent her to bed. The next day, Jen stated she had gotten out of bed at approximately 9 o'clock and left the residence at around 9:30. Now, we have the information from the detective based upon videos and information that they gathered. In the surveillance footage, I observed a male wearing a red shirt leaving the complex in a 2010 silver Lincoln MKZ, that's the car that Sterns has been driving through the rear gate at 7:50 with a female wearing a green sweater in the front seat. This person appeared to be sitting upright with her head slumped over to her left side. At 8:19, I observed a male wearing a red shirt enter the complex. At 8:31, the male wearing a red shirt left the complex in the silver Lincoln through the rear gate with a female in the front passenger completely slumped over to the left. So let's break this down. Let me bring in my special guest, true crime live streamer. He's on YouTube, Gray Hughes of Gray Hughes Investigates, and today he just released a brand new episode diving into all of these new documents. Make sure you check it out again on YouTube, Gray Hughes Investigates. Gray, great to see you tonight. I have a timeline here based upon some of this information that I just outlined. I want to go through it with you. 8:30 p.m., Madeline is dropped off at home. 8:45, Stephan arrives at the home. 10:30, Jen arrives at the home. In this little time period right here, this was what was very unclear to me before we got these documents. What are your thoughts about the beginnings of this timeline?
Yeah, I mean, I think originally we all thought that maybe Stephan went to the birthday party. But now it sounds like he just shows up there at 10:45 at the house, and then I guess Jennifer shows up, but he's already directed Madeline to get ready for bed. And then, as you were saying earlier, Madeline and Stephan were sent upstairs to go to sleep in room number 4. I guess they have numbers on the door. And then what's incredible is just only like 49 minutes after they were going to go, when they were sent to bed, that's when Stephan Sterns is on Telegram. And we did a show on that a while back.
Let me put this up on the screen, because 11 o'clock, they go to bed, and you said 49 minutes later, Stephan logs on to Telegram. Tell us about Telegram. What is this app? Who's on this app, and what potentially could be going on this app?
Well, the app's used by a whole bunch of different people. You can upload videos and things like, just for anything. Like, for example, the war in Gaza, they uploaded the videos there, in Israel there. But, just people upload, you can upload videos. But the thing is it's also encrypted. So people can upload things secretly, and apparently this is the new up-and-coming site where a lot of the pedophiles and deviant sexual individuals out there are uploading videos and sharing, and that makes it, I'm a little concerned about that. What was he doing at 11:49 on Telegram? And we know that Madeline died sometime after 11 o'clock. And when she left in the morning when they left in the morning at, like, I think 7:50, his car is seen leaving the complex. And looks like she's already dead, actually, in the vehicle with her body slumped over. So it was way before that, likely.
It's also, and what we've also learned, right, is that in some of these alleged sex abuse, Madeline appears to be asleep, right? She's given her nighttime medicine.
Yeah.
There's a history of her being abused while she's asleep, and now 49 minutes after being sent to bed by her mom with Stephan, now all of a sudden he's logging on to this. Does Telegram have live applications as well? Do we know?
I don't know if it has live, but this is that site that we were talking about where people, they upload, and then it's the place where they would coerce girls to upload videos, and then after they uploaded the videos, they would use it as blackmail against them to do more and more and more things. And I actually had maybe a theory, possibly, that Stephan Sterns became, this is just a random theory, okay, but maybe he's a victim of the same sort of, I don't want to call him a victim, he's a monster, but like he also was coerced by blackmail because they figured out who he was, and therefore he created this video that they had him do, or the information was going to come out. But it's probably likely more something that Madeline, she just turned 13, who knows what she started saying to Stephan Sterns, and maybe at that point he decided he can't allow her to come forward with information about what he's been doing to her over the years, because now she realizes it was bad.
Yeah. And I'm learning in my ear, we have great producers, that there is an ability to live stream on this Telegram, which that's scary.
Oh, great.
Now, the following morning, let's go through the following morning. 7 to 7:15, Sterns claims he and Madeline wake up. 7:30 to 7:45, he claims they leave the house. 7:50 is when he's spotted driving away with Madeline slumped in the car, again, by these cameras that are near the exits of the complex. 8 to 8:15, Jen claims she's woken up by Sterns with this dog leash and hears people in the kitchen. Well, at 8:19, he re-enters the complex with Madeline slumped over. So that could be slightly accurate, that by 8:19, 8:20, he's back, and maybe that's when Sterns comes in for the dog leash. 8:31, he leaves the complex with Madeline still slumped over, and then Jen finally gets out of bed. So looking at these times, When do you believe that this murder could have taken place either at night or potentially early that morning?
Yeah, I think it's going to be sometime after 11 to like 4 or 5 in the morning, in my opinion. But he comes back at 8:19 with her body visible, and then what's interesting, at 8:31 he leaves again. So what was he do? What happened in those 12 minutes? He goes inside the house, and then obviously Madeline's body is still sitting in the car. Is it still propped up? Does he like bend her over and put a blanket on so he can go in the house for a minute, and then he goes back in? And then at 8:31, the car leaves. And I don't know if you want to go over this part yet, but at 9:40, he makes it to a hotel.
Oh, we're going to get there. We're going to get there.
Yeah.
I want to focus on this right now. All right, Gray Hughes is going to stay with us. Stand by. I want to bring in our think tank who's joining us live in studio tonight. And with us, criminal defense attorney, entertainment attorney, and former assistant DA in Atlanta, Daryl Cohen is with us. Also joining us tonight, criminal defense attorney, Emory University law professor Molly Palmer. And look at this. He flew in from Florida, the Sunshine State, to be with us. The state attorney for Palm Beach County, Dave Arenberg. Great to see everyone. All right. This is a strong case against Stephan Sterns. No doubt. No doubt. I'm going to go to the prosecutor from Florida first.
I'm an ex-prosecutor before he was in Florida.
That's right. But what do you, I mean, strong.
Sure.
This seems strong, this timeline, strong. Do you have an idea when you think this murder could have taken place?
No, it's either going to be late at night or early in the morning, and then the video is important that you have her slumped over. So she was dead before she ever got to school, where he said he dropped her off several blocks away from school. By that point, she was already dead. So they've got good surveillance on him. They've got a guy with all the sexual abuse on his phone, so you can see why he would have done this, the motive. So I think it's a very, very powerful case. It's headed towards a death penalty because you can, in Florida now, not only get the death penalty for the murder, but for the underlying sexual abuse against a child.
Yeah. Daryl, this, like everything that we suspected is now coming to fruition. But the thing that really surprised me here was the timeline of him coming home and with her, just him and her before mom even gets home.
Well, let me say this. There ain't no sunshine here in this Florida because right now Dave came from the non-sunshine state to get some hot weather from Atlanta. Having said that, he backed up. He went through the back gate. He probably was not aware, because he is so smart, that there was video, that there's surveillance, and he came back in, and then he went back out the back gate. All of this says one thing to me. Not a good guy. Says, I agree with Dave, I agree with everybody. He was probably the murderer either after 11 at night or in the morning. But either way, she was obviously propped up. And what happened when he went inside, well, don't know, but it doesn't matter. She was already dead.
Molly, I'm looking at this timeline. It doesn't work with his timeline. The video.
I think there's a lot that we have in terms of evidence against Stephan Sterns, but beyond that, we also hear him speaking to law enforcement, as soon as they arrive in the home, and everything he says is entirely inconsistent with the evidence that we now have. And so when you have a case like this, if you're a defense lawyer, you don't plead somebody out to the death penalty. This will be a trial. I think procedurally it will be interesting because we're likely going to see the sex abuse charges go first and then used as an aggravating factor for the death penalty trial of the murder. But yes, overwhelming evidence and his own words.
His own words.
His own words are going to sink him.
Everyone's staying with us. When we come back, the other part of this story everyone's talking about is Madeline's mom, Jen Soto. And based upon what we're learning now, should she be worried or is she a victim?
Wade Wilson is accused of killing 2 women in 2019.
Her face was black and blue. Her fingernails were broken. The last person that they encountered was Mr. Wade Wilson.
I did not commit these murders, and I'm innocent.
Wilson was arrested and found covered in blood.
We're taking you inside the courtroom for this high-stakes death penalty case.
The Strangled Women Murder Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
So there's Madeline Soto with her mom, Jen. She was a single mom. Dad was in another state, so she's basically raising her, but Stephan Sterns was in the picture. But now, Stephan Sterns, we know the charges against him. He's facing the death penalty. The evidence is strong, but everyone's wondering about mom. Jen Soto Is there any criminal liability for what she did and for what she didn't do? Here's what we're learning, some more information. Jen was using the past tense while speaking. This is one of the detectives. While speaking, I noted that Jen referred to Madeline, this is when she's only missing, using the past tense several times when she mentioned her. I inquired about whether or not it was normal to allow Madeline and Stephan to sleep in the same room unsupervised. Jen replied, this was not common practice. However, she did not have any suspicion that anything inappropriate would occur between the two. Jen used to be very hypervigilant around Stephan. However, as the years have gone by, she's allowed Madeline and him to be alone because they get along very well. Let's bring back in our think tank, Daryl Cohen, Molly Palmer, Dave Arenberg. It's bad, right? We know it's bad. She is like handing her daughter over to this alleged pedophile. Dave Arenberg in Florida is doing that in and of itself. Sending your daughter to bed with your boyfriend. Is that enough? And sometimes it's not even her boyfriend anymore. They're like broken up, but he comes over just to sleep with her.
Child neglect that creates great bodily harm. In this case, death could be prosecuted as a felony. So you can file charges, but I think that the prosecutors want more. Otherwise, they would already have done so here. I mean, look, the world hates this mother. She's awful in her actions, but whether it's criminal, I think the prosecutors obviously want her to flip against the boyfriend. But I think that if they had enough evidence to charge her today, they would have done so. So perhaps they're just investigating more. They're just not there yet.
Do you need her to testify to set up that timeline, Daryl?
I was going to say, I love my fellow prosecutor. He's the boss. I was the boss. No, you don't need him. And I think they're waiting to see whether or not some more evidence develops, because mom obviously can be charged. And in my opinion, she can be convicted. How can you be there, not hear, not see, not be aware? And oh, by the way, because she gets along so well with my boyfriend, former boyfriend, I think they should sleep together because it's just good practice. This is horrendous. That mom needs to be prosecuted. And even if the state attorney, the prosecutor cannot get a conviction, there's something called prosecutor's time. Sometimes you don't have to get mad, you can get even.
You know, I think it's really interesting when we think about the level of what's negligent, right? I mean, a 13-year-old, I don't know any mother who's going to allow her 13-year-old daughter to sleep in a room with a boyfriend or non-boyfriend or whatever. But separate from the negligence, I am really fascinated by this reference to the past tense, right? What does she know the morning of the murder? What does she know? And Florida law, my prosecutor friend to my right, I'm sure can correct me if I'm wrong about this, you have this accessory after the fact law that's pretty interesting. If you're married, sometimes it can't apply. In a case of a murder, it always can apply. These two weren't married. But if she knew about this murder, even if she wasn't complicit in it necessarily, she can be charged, and she will be going down right alongside Stephan Sterns.
Wow. Something else I want to put up here, because this is also significant in understanding the relationship between Madeline and Jen. Now, Madeline told her friend that she didn't get along with her mom. They're interviewing Madeline's friends and classmates. Madeline's friend had heard from another friend, so double hearsay, I get it. Madeline's mom told her she was going to kick her out of the house and disown her when she turned 18 or 19. It's always tough in a house, a mom and teenage daughters, right? You know, 9 times out of 10, it is in that situation. How important is that? Is this psychologically, where do you think mom is on all of this? Do you think it's possible that she's using her daughter to keep a man in her life? And if so, that's illegal, right? Because then you're almost like you're trafficking your daughter to keep a man in your life. It's a tough case to prove, though.
There are a lot of layers here, Vinny, and there are a lot of layers, so it's tough to know what she's thinking. There's that video of her standing in front of Stephan at the insurance tax office where she's talking about her missing daughter, and he's behind her to the side. It looks like a hostage video.
There
and
they
he's
are,
there.
yeah.
Yeah, he's almost standing guard. And that's why, you know, there's part of me that thinks that she's just a clueless woman who has been under the thumb of this awful monster. And so that's where I am as a prosecutor, that I just don't think they have enough yet to file charges against her.
How important is the mental state of of this mom, right? Like how she reacted to all this. If she has a mental breakdown or something, is that going to impact, or should it impact what is done with her?
First of all, she hasn't yet had that mental breakdown, and she may never have that.
She may have, I don't know.
But to the best of our knowledge and belief, playing lawyer for a second, but the fact that she was so much a part of what went on, I don't think it should have any impact. I think a jury would be itching, begging for her to go to trial so they can listen or not listen to the evidence, but convict her regardless.
All right, stay where you are. We've got much more new information connected to the death of Madeline Soto.
We have a very strong bond. But, you know, I'm the person she goes to when her mom gets in a fight with her and she needs someone to comfort her. And like, I'm that person for her, you know. This girl knows nothing but love here in this house.
It's hard to listen to that, knowing what we know now. Take a look, more information that was revealed in these documents related to the investigation. And this again, the Holiday Inn Club Vacations parking garage, 9:40 a.m., Sterns is spotted carrying a limp body. While in the parking garage, a male wearing a dark hat, red shirt, and tan pants exited the vehicle and opened the trunk. The male then walked to the front passenger side of the vehicle, opened the door, and proceeded to carry what appeared to be a limp body to the trunk of this vehicle. Still with us, true crime live streamer Gray Hughes of Gray Hughes Investigates. Ray, this is another huge development. Your thoughts about this and what else you've learned about this Holiday Inn Club Vacations parking garage?
Well, it was up on the top of the parking garage. I guess he apparently backed in, like just like you read, and then he opened the trunk, took her out of the passenger seat, and put her in there. And then, I mean, it's weird because I guess that was the spot that he figured out that he could put her into the trunk without anybody seeing him. But again, there's surveillance cameras in the hotel. So doesn't it feel to you like he didn't know what the hell he was doing on this night? Like he just committed, you know, he killed Madeline, but didn't have a plan afterwards. And that's why we have this thing about, like, remember the whole McDonald's thing where he did these U-turns? He kept wanting to go to McDonald's to try to explain why his car is moving around. And then he gets back to the apartment complex at 8:19, and then he leaves again at 8:31. Then he ends up at this hotel here, and then eventually after that, he makes his way back home at around 11 o'clock. He's back at his house, and then he leaves again. I don't know if you're going into that next, but he leaves again at like 12:40, and they have him completely mapped out with like 20 different surveillance cameras on the highway 192, and it shows him almost all the way to where he placed Madeline's body in the bamboo shoots.
Yeah, let's get to that right now, because we have that. And this is where police discovered Madeline's body. Just a few feet into the bamboo tree line, we noticed what appeared to be blue jeans. As we got closer, we noticed what appeared to be a body. The top half of the body was covered by a green-colored hooded sweatshirt, and the bottom half was covered with blue jeans. The body was laying on the left side in somewhat of a fetal position. It appeared that the body was covered by pieces of hay or dry grass. Based on my training and experience, it was apparent this was a human body. I did not see any signs of life. I could clearly see flies covering the body. Then we have the description from the medical examiner. She was observed in a state of decomposition with visible insect activity around her mouth, left eye, ears, and right hand. Discoloration was observed on her face, neck, torso, back, and hands. And then we have that map of where the body was discovered, and there's a couple of yellow markers on there on the right side. So the body's on the left side of the screen in the red, but across that hickory tree road, you see those two markers, tire fragments.
Yeah, those are, yeah.
And the body was about 72 feet from the road. And this is where we get back to that initial story. You had a witness who saw someone fitting the description, changing the tire over there. And our question always was it an actual flat tire, or was it a ruse to pull over to the side of the road and get rid of a body? But you've got some tire fragments, so it was a flat tire. The question is, did he get it driving around, or did he do it to himself?
Yeah, I actually think he had an actual flat tire. That's why her body was found so close to the road there. He wasn't able to, he had a flat tire. He had to pull over as quickly as possible, kind of in a secluded place. He's on a straightaway so he can see in both directions. And when he noticed there was no cars coming either direction, he would have had to taken her body and ran towards that fence. I guess it was open at the time. And then he ran around, put her in the bushes, and then he waited and just kind of walked out to make sure there was no cars coming, and then made his way back to his car, and then likely changed his tire after that, because you would want to get rid of, if you're a criminal, you'd want to probably get rid of the body first before you started working on your tire. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I agree with you 10,000%, because if you're working on the side of the road on your tire, you could have a good Samaritan come by to help you, or if law enforcement happens to be in the area, especially in the friendly Central Florida area, they will likely stop to make sure you're okay and ask you if you need help. And you don't want to have that body in the back of your car at that moment.
Yeah, exactly.
So as you've gone through all these documents, anything else that really struck you and made you surprise you, or kind of put some pieces together a little differently than maybe you thought prior to getting these hundreds and hundreds of documents?
Yeah, it was crazy going through all of those. I mean, there's so many documents. I think what I'm glad to see in it is that sort of puts the pieces of the puzzle together a little bit better than we had, because now we know that at 7:36 in the morning, when he's seen at the dumpster, it was actually, he threw a plastic bag in the dumpster. Inside the plastic bag was a backpack and one Croc shoe. And inside the backpack, that was inside the bag, was the laptop. So, all those lies that Stephan Sterns, oh, she was, with her laptop and backpack, he knew that wasn't true. But when he went back later, after he was at the crime scene, he drove back to the apartment complex, and around, I think it's 4:40 or so in the afternoon. I can't remember the exact time, but he is seen throwing the tire treads into the garbage can. Now, for sure that those tire pieces that they found at the crime scene are going to match those tire treads perfectly. Stephan Sterns is absolutely toast in this case. I mean, he has like no chance of any viable defense whatsoever.
So let's get back to your point, Gray, here about the actions and how it doesn't make a ton of sense, and he's seemingly driving back and forth. I'm sensing some panic, which might lead us to, he was not planning this out. Like, this may have been in the midst of another attempted sexual assault where there is a reaction and something happens, and that's when he takes the actions that end the life of Madeline Soto, and now he's got, whether it's minutes or hours, to try to figure out, how do I cover this up? How do I get rid of her? How do I have a cover story? And it seems from all these interviews and everything else, his plan was to do that drive, mimic like he's driving with her. She's propped up so any cameras will see her, and then drive towards the school. And then have that story that, hey, I dropped her off not at school, but close to the school, and then she started to walk, which leaves it open to someone abducted her because she was dropped off at school a little early. There weren't a lot of people in the area. There weren't other kids. And that was going to be the story. It may still be his defense story, but it looks like it's completely shattered by the great investigation that was done by Kissimmee and Orange County in this.
Oh, it's been absolutely amazing. If you go through in that 900-page document and you go down to where they do the, I think, cell tower information, where it's just screenshot after screenshot of it changing, you can actually just hit the arrow key down, and it's like an animated movie. You can actually see where the vehicle is moving on the roads, different cell tower. Those are from video cameras, but then also the cell tower information, you can see where each of the cell phones were from different people. And it was interesting because in there it mentioned Stephan Sterns' dad's cell phone information. I was wondering if he was using his dad's cell phone that night. I wasn't really sure about that, but it just seems so, discombobulated. He's just running around. He doesn't. He takes off, and I totally agree with you that I think it's possible, very possible, that the murder itself wasn't really something he had initially planned, but something happened that night that made him realize that he has to do this, but he didn't plan anything else out. That's why so many cameras picked him up.
Yeah. Thank goodness for these cameras. Gray Hughes investigates on YouTube. Make sure you check it out. Deep dives always on these cases. Thanks so much. Let's bring back in our think tank, Daryl Cohen, Molly Palmer, Dave Arenberg. What do you suspect this trial is going to look like? Not the one for everything that was found on his phone. That's the first one. But this one, the death penalty murder trial. What's it going to be about?
I mean, I think at the end of the day, like I said, you don't plead your client out to the death penalty, and you kind of go through the motions. And I think any death penalty attorney...
Will they go with his story, though, that he dropped her off?
I think that the best bet is going to be to... I think Gray Hughes's insight was pretty on point. Was this planned out, or was this something that happened and now he's just in a panic and trying to cover his tracks? Unfortunately, again, when you run your mouth like he did and you make a statement like that, it kind of, it's going to work against him no matter what the facts are and however the evidence comes out, and the evidence is already incredibly strong. But I think you just sit beside your client and you make sure the government does its job, because death is on the table. That's it. You sit there and you let them present their case and meet their burden. And that's what these trials look like. And it happens all the time in the death penalty space.
Vinny, I think the prosecutors agree that this was not premeditated. This was not thought out. This was a guy who was panicking, because when it came to the death penalty aggravators, which is going to be the penalty phase of this trial, they did not mention the cold, calculated, and premeditated aggravator. They could have. That's not one of the four that were mentioned. So that makes me believe that they think this was a guy who's committing a terrible crime of sexual abuse, killed Madeline, panicked, so it was not premeditated.
And I don't tend to agree. I absolutely agree. But I think that he is not going to have a theory of defense. I think his theory of defense...
Let me throw this out to you, Daryl, and tell me if you think they'll run with it. Right, his story is he drops her off. The night that she's reported missing, Orange County deputies respond to that church in that parking lot. They go and look at the surveillance video. They see a girl by herself. It's blurry. You can't identify who it is, but it's clearly a younger girl by herself in that parking lot, and then sort of leaves the screen. So that exists, because that night the Orange County deputies thought they had video of her based upon the statements of Sterns.
So Sterns' lawyers are going to let the state attorney's office prove the case, and they're going to try, in my view, to show that the theory of the state is inaccurate, that this may very well have been the girl, may have been Soto. I didn't kill her, he says. But he can't say anything. He can't testify. And his lawyers have got to be very careful about establishing a theory, because if it's directly contrary to what the state attorney's office theory is, and the evidence is going to be against them, they've got to be very careful. So they have to, as Molly says, prove it step by step by step. Sit there, hold his hand, and try your best to make a good defense. And the best defense here is really doesn't matter. It's not going to matter.
Is there any lesser included charge based on these circumstances?
Yeah,
Because sometimes I've seen defense attorneys do this, right? It's a loser of a case, but maybe it's, second degree or something.
No,
in these circumstances, is there any argument for anything?
Let him try to escape. That would be lesser included.
Yeah, I think strategically, given the quantum of evidence that we've now seen in all of these documents, I imagine the strategy for the defense is going to be to try and get him life without the possibility of parole rather than the death penalty. But you go through the trial, you make an appellate record.
Are the things you do in the trial towards that end?
Yeah, certainly. So, first we're going to see the actual trial on the facts of the case, and then we're going to have the death portion where the 4 aggravating factors are going to be presented. The idea that she was a vulnerable victim, I think mom is going to come into play there. And, certainly if he has the prior conviction for the sex abuse, that's a big aggravating factor the jury will hear about. And the defense presents, stuff we don't know at this point. His life, his background, anything mitigating about him at all, anything mental health. We don't know. We don't know. At this point, we don't know.
They may adopt the Nicholas Cruz strategy. That's the Parkland massacre. That's the guy who clearly did it. They had him dead to rights. So he pled to the court, pled guilty, and then he went right to the penalty phase and was able to say that his mother didn't love him enough, smoked in the womb, all that other stuff, and it got him life in prison by a 9-3 vote. The problem is, for Sterns, the law has now changed. You'll get the death penalty in Florida now by a vote of 8-4. It doesn't have to be unanimous anymore.
Yeah, that's a big change. That's a game changer down in Florida.
Yeah, and I think ultimately when it comes to these kind of interesting changes in the law, like my prosecutor friend also mentioned that now you can have the death penalty for the child sex abuse as well. This is a new change. Everything with death penalty litigation is a lot of times like post-conviction. It's 3-dimensional chess. So you go through the trial, you have terrible facts, and you're thinking about how they changed the law, and perhaps you have a constitutional challenge that you can bring up many pleadings later after the trial's concluded, after you've been found guilty.
Let me ask you this. Is there, because again, the discussion on this case always comes back to Jen Soto, right? Is there any prosecutor anywhere that would consider sitting down speaking with Stephan Sterns, taking death off the table for him to implicate her?
I would think not. I would think not at all. But I also believe that she is going to be prosecuted. I just think it's a matter of time and exactly what the charges are. No prosecutor would take the death penalty off because it would be not only the wrong thing to do, but the optics would be even worse than taking the penalty of death off.
And who's your key witness against the mother? This monster? He'd make the worst witness, so no deal for this guy.
He would be the worst. Okay. As I look at what happened in this case with Jen Soto, and I'm trying to understand, is there anything that we can take away from this? Like, is there any lesson? Is there anything that our system can do to protect someone like Madeline? She was subjected to this man for years. Or is it almost nothing the system can do because mom was not there to protect her?
There are times when tragedies happen over which we should have had control, should have had knowledge, but we can't. Mom was there. Mom said nothing. Mom should have. She didn't. Maybe, just maybe, if mom is prosecuted, whether she is convicted or not, it's another story. But if she's prosecuted, it might tell the public. I'm saying, that's what I'm saying. If enough people put their eyes on this as to what happened, oh my gosh, I better go take care of my child. I don't like what he's doing. I'm not sure. Maybe, just maybe, that will save the life of one child.
Are you surprised that no doctor was told, no teacher, no mandatory reporter who, if they heard anything or saw anything, certainly would have stepped forward and made a report here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and I'll say, you gentlemen probably haven't experienced this, but being a 13-year-old girl is very difficult. Being a prepubescent young girl, it's a very, it's a stressful time in your life, no matter how good your home life is. And I think at the end of the day, we have to encourage young women to talk and to share things and to be open and to discuss their lives.
Let me put this out there. This is from an interview of Madeline's 13-year-old friend. Madeline's friend told me that Madeline typically got her menstrual cycle 2 days before she did, the friend did, except for last month when Madeline got hers a week or two after Madeline's friend got hers. Madeline's friend told me they did not have conversations as to why her menstrual cycle was late. Madeline's friend believed she was a virgin and she did not ever see or hear anything to the contrary. Because a lot of people are still wondering, could the motive have been that this little girl may have gotten pregnant?
Right. Right, and I think you have to have difficult conversations sometimes with young women that potentially are in dangerous situations. It's very hard to have the bravery and the courage, no matter how heinous your home life is, to bring that conversation to light. And so I think that those around young women, middle school age women, have to have these difficult conversations in hopes that you can encourage people who are in positions like Madeline's to have a voice.
Molly is so right, because teachers, everybody who surrounds a child has got to keep their eyes wide open, not wide shut. And the more they see, the more they look, the more they see, and the more they see, they've got to say something, even if they believe it's going to go on deaf ears. We've got to protect our kids better than we're doing.
Absolutely. Give me the final word.
Yeah, perhaps it should be a crime in Florida to allow your creepy boyfriend to sleep in a bed with your daughter. And maybe the only way to get that on the books is to prosecute it in this case. That'll send the right message.
Big thank you to our think tank tonight. What a job, what a job. Daryl Cohen, Molly Palmer, and of course, Dave Arenberg joining us live here. Great to see you.